Captain Lee Tae-min walked slowly across the bridge of his ship called Iron Phoenix. The metal floor made small sounds under his boots. Outside the big windows he could see nothing but empty black space filled with tiny bright stars. His ship had been flying through this darkness for 18 long months. 200 humans lived inside the ship, and they were all tired of the long journey. Lee looked at the old maps spread across his desk. These maps were very special because they came from deep underground on Earth. Scientists had found them buried in ancient ruins that were thousands of years old. The strange thing about these maps was that they showed star systems with living beings. The maps had pictures of planets with cities and space stations and ships flying between worlds, but Earth had never met any aliens before. No one from space had ever visited Earth, no radio signals had ever come from other worlds. So how could these old maps show a galaxy full of life when Earth seemed to be alone? Lee had decided to follow these maps. He wanted to find out if other living beings really existed among the stars. The government had given him the best ship they could build. The Iron Phoenix was strong and fast and had everything needed for a long journey. But after 80 months of flying, they had found nothing but empty space. Park Sora sat at her station working with the radio equipment. She was the communications officer, and her job was to listen for any signals from space. For months and months she had heard nothing. The radio was always quiet. Sometimes she wondered if they were really alone in the universe. Then something changed. Sora was drinking her morning coffee when her equipment started making noise. At first she thought it was broken. The screens were showing signals coming from everywhere. Dozens of different radio channels were suddenly full of voices. The voices were speaking in languages she had never heard before. Sora jumped up from her chair and ran to Captain Lee. Her face was white with shock and her hands were shaking. She told him that the radio was picking up alien voices from all directions. The voices sounded scared and worried. They were talking very fast and seemed to be giving warnings to each other. Lee followed Sora back to her station. He listened to the strange alien voices filling the radio channels. The computer was trying to translate the alien languages, but it was having trouble keeping up. There were too many different voices speaking at the same time. The computer managed to translate some of the words. The aliens kept saying things like, "They have returned," and "the Deathbringers are back," and "prepare all defenses." Lee did not understand what they meant. Who had returned? What were Deathbringers? Why did the aliens sound so afraid? Engineer Kim Woo-jin came running onto the bridge. He was carrying his tablet computer and his face looked worried. He showed Lee the energy readings from their sensors. Something impossible was happening. Every star system within 50 light-years was suddenly full of activity. Kim explained what the sensors were showing. Huge alien ships were moving through space. Space stations were turning on powerful weapons. Entire planets were raising energy shields to protect themselves. All of this activity had started the moment the Iron Phoenix had dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Lee stared at the sensor readings. He could not believe what he was seeing. The galaxy was not empty at all. It was full of advanced civilizations with technology that seemed far beyond anything humans had. But why were they all acting like they were preparing for war? Dr. Yoon Minji arrived on the bridge to help with the translations. She was the ship's expert on alien languages and cultures. Even though they had never met any aliens before, she had studied every theory about how alien minds might work. She listened to the radio chatter and her face became more worried with each passing minute. The aliens were not just scared. They were terrified. Some of the voices were crying. Others were praying to their gods. Military commanders were giving emergency orders to their fleets. Civilian populations were being told to hide in underground shelters. Yoon managed to piece together some of the alien conversations. The aliens believed that humanity was something called a Category Omega species. This seemed to be their term for the most dangerous type of life form in the galaxy. The aliens had legends about humans that went back thousands of years. According to the alien radio chatter, humans were known as the species that burned stars, and the ones who made war an art form. The aliens believed that humans could fight. for days without getting tired. They thought human scientists could turn any peaceful technology into terrible weapons. They believed human leaders would destroy entire worlds to win their wars. Lee could not understand any of this. Humans had never left Earth before this mission. They had never met any aliens. They had never fought any space wars. How could the aliens have such detailed stories about humanity? When first contact was happening right now, the most frightening part was that these alien stories were very old. Some of the legends about humans went back 8,000 years or more. The aliens had been afraid of humanity since before human civilization had even begun on Earth. Communications officer Sora reported that over 300 alien ships were heading toward their position. The ships were coming from many different star systems, and they all seemed to be military vessels. Some of the ships were bigger than entire cities on Earth. Engineer Kim showed Lee the power readings from the approaching alien fleet. Each of those ships had weapons that could destroy planets. Their shields could stop anything humans knew how to build. Their engines were so advanced that they could cross the galaxy in days instead of years, but the strangest thing was that all these powerful aliens seemed to be afraid of one small human ship. The Iron Phoenix was advanced by Earth standards, but it was tiny compared to the alien vessels. It had no weapons except mining lasers. Its shields were designed to stop space rocks, not military attacks. Lee realized that they were in serious trouble. The aliens clearly believed humans were some kind of ancient enemy. They were preparing to fight a war against legends and myths that somehow involved humanity. But Lee and his crew were just explorers who wanted to make friends with other species. The captain looked around his bridge at his worried crew. Park Sora was still monitoring the increasingly panicked alien communications. Kim Woo-jin was tracking the massive alien fleet that was surrounding them. Dr. Yoon Min-ji was trying to understand alien legends that painted humanity as galaxy-destroying monsters. None of it made any sense. But Lee knew they had to find answers quickly. The galaxy had been preparing for humanity's return for thousands of years. Now that humans had finally arrived, the entire known universe was holding its breath and waiting to see what would happen next. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic consequences had begun. Admiral Choi Hyun-woo was sitting in his command chair reading peaceful trade reports when everything changed. His flagship was the largest vessel in the Galactic Defense Fleet. The ship was so big that it had its own farms and factories inside. Choi had been an admiral for 20 years, and he had never seen a real war. The galaxy had been peaceful for centuries. His aide was a young officer from the crystalline species. Her skin was blue like crystal, and she could change colors when she felt different emotions. Right now she was turning pale white, which meant she was very scared. She handed Choi an emergency message that had just arrived from fleet headquarters. The message was short, but it made Choi feel cold inside. It said, "Humanity has returned. All fleets assume maximum alert status immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Choi read the message 3 times because he could not believe what it said. Humanity was supposed to be just an old legend. A scary story that military schools used to teach young officers about the dangers of war. No one really believed that humans had ever existed. They were like monsters in children's stories that parents told to make their kids behave, but the emergency protocols were very real. Choi watched as automated systems throughout his ship began powering up weapons that had not been used in 300 years. Defensive shields that existed only for training exercises suddenly became active. His peaceful trade vessel was transforming into a war machine. All across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. The Crystalline Collective had built their entire civilization around peaceful trading and scientific research. They had no real military, and they had not fought a war in over 1,000 years. But when they heard that humanity had returned, they immediately began evacuating their outer colonies. Millions of crystal beings loaded their families onto transport ships and fled toward the center of the galaxy. They left behind cities and research stations and mining operations that had taken centuries to build. Ancient emergency plans that no one thought would ever be used. suddenly became the most important documents in their civilization. The warrior clans of the Red Nebula reacted differently. These aliens had been bred for fighting, but they had not had a real enemy in 3 centuries. Their weapons had become museum pieces, and their battle skills had turned into ceremonial dances. When they heard about humanity, they rushed to their old armories and began preparing for war. Old clan leaders who had only read about combat in history books suddenly found themselves planning real military campaigns. Young warriors who had never seen blood began sharpening swords that their great-grandfathers had carried. Battle songs that had become children's nursery rhymes were sung with deadly seriousness once again. Even the mysterious energy beings from the Galactic core responded to news of humanity's return. These aliens rarely interacted with physical species because they existed as pure thought and energy. They lived inside stars and communicated through gravity waves. But when they learned that humans were back, they sent warning pulses across subspace that could be felt on every inhabited world. Captain Lee watched all of this happening from the bridge of the Iron Phoenix. Their long-range sensors showed massive fleets converging on their position from every direction. Space itself seemed to be turning hostile, as defense networks that had been dormant for thousands of years suddenly came online. The aliens were not just preparing to fight one small human ship, they were preparing to fight an invasion force that they believed could destroy the entire galaxy. Military bases that had been turned into museums were being reactivated. Weapons that existed only in blueprints were being built as fast as possible. Entire species were mobilizing for total war. Yun Minji worked frantically in her laboratory trying to understand what the aliens were saying about humanity. The universal translator was having trouble keeping up with all the different alien languages, but the basic message was always the same. Humans were the most dangerous species that had ever existed, according to alien records. Humans were described as the children of the world killer planet and the species that turned peace into a weapon. The aliens believed that human warriors could fight for weeks without sleeping. They thought human scientists could look at any technology and immediately figure out how to weaponize it. The most terrifying stories were about human leadership. The aliens believed that human commanders would sacrifice entire star systems to win a single battle. They thought humans saw war not as a last resort, but as the preferred way to solve any problem. Some alien cultures had legends saying that humans actually enjoyed destroying other civilizations, but the strangest part was how old these stories were. Some of the alien legends about humanity went back 10,000 years. The stories had been passed down through hundreds of generations of alien civilizations. They had become part of alien religion and culture and law. Yun found records showing that the Galactic Council had created special military units whose only job was to watch for signs of humanity's return. These units had been maintained for thousands of years, even though no one had ever seen a human. Entire planets had been fortified with weapons, designed specifically to fight against mythical human tactics. The galaxy had been shaped by fear of humanity for millennia. Trade routes avoided areas where humans were supposed to have lived. Scientific research had been directed toward developing defenses against theoretical human weapons. Diplomatic treaties included clauses about what to do if humans ever came. Engineer Kim discovered something even more disturbing while analyzing alien communication networks. The aliens had detailed technical specifications for weapons that humans were supposed to possess. They had blueprints for human ships that could travel between galaxies. They had theories about human technology that seemed to border on magic. The alien military databases contained battle plans for fighting against human fleets that could appear and disappear at will. They had strategies for dealing with human weapons that could crack planets in half. They had evacuation procedures for when humans used something called star-killer bombs. That could make entire solar systems go dark. None of this technology existed anywhere in human science. Earth's most advanced weapons were primitive compared to what the aliens thought humans could build. But somehow the aliens had spent thousands of years preparing to fight against human capabilities that were far beyond anything humans had ever Imagine. Captain Lee realized they were facing something much more complex than a simple case of mistaken identity. The galaxy had not just heard rumors about humanity. They had detailed historical records that painted humans as an ancient galactic empire with godlike technology and an appetite for destruction, but humans had never left Earth before this mission. So where had all these detailed alien records come from, and why did the entire galaxy believe that humanity had once ruled half the known universe before mysteriously vanishing overnight? The truth was buried somewhere in galactic history, and Captain Lee knew they had to find it before fear turned the entire galaxy into their enemy. Ambassador Bae Sujin had spent her entire career preparing for first contact with alien species. She had studied every theory about how aliens might think and communicate. She had practiced diplomatic protocols for dozens of different scenarios. But nothing had prepared her for this. The Galactic Council had finally agreed to send a diplomatic vessel to meet the human ship. But when the alien diplomats arrived, they came with an escort of 50 heavily armed battleships. Each battleship was the size of a small city and bristled with weapons that could level mountains. The diplomatic vessel itself was surrounded by energy shields so powerful they made the space around it glow. Bae watched through the viewports as the alien ships approached. She had expected maybe one or two escort vessels for a peaceful diplomatic meeting. Instead, she was looking at enough firepower to conquer entire star systems. The aliens were not coming to negotiate. They were coming to contain what they believed was the most dangerous threat in galactic history. The docking process took 3 hours because the aliens insisted on using every possible safety protocol. They scanned the Iron Phoenix with sensors that could detect individual atoms. They surrounded the docking bay with force fields and armed guards. They even brought their own air supply because they were afraid that human atmosphere might be poisonous or weaponized. When the alien diplomats finally boarded the human ship, they were wearing full environmental suits and carrying personal shield generators. The lead negotiator was a tall creature with silver skin and 6 eyes arranged around his head. His name was impossible for humans to pronounce, so he told them to call him Ambassador Silver. Silver's voice shook with barely controlled fear as he spoke through the universal translator. He explained that he had volunteered for this mission because his government needed their most experienced diplomat to handle humanity. But Bae could see that his hands were trembling and his extra eyes kept darting around looking for threats that did not exist. The first shock came when Silver told them about humanity's classification in galactic law. Humans were listed as a Category Omega extinction threat, which was the highest possible danger rating in the galactic legal system. Only 3 species in recorded history had ever received this classification, and all 3 had been responsible for the complete destruction of major galactic civilizations. Bae tried to explain that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. She told Silver that humans were peaceful explorers who wanted to make friends with other species. She showed him pictures of Earth with its blue oceans and green forests. She explained that humans were scientists and artists and philosophers who had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship, but every word she spoke seemed to make the alien diplomats more nervous. When she mentioned that Earth had a population of 12 billion people, several of the diplomatic staff members fainted and had to be carried away by medical teams. The number was so large that the aliens could not comprehend it without panicking. When Engineer Kim tried to help by demonstrating some basic human technology, the results were even worse. He showed them a simple plasma torch that was used for cutting metal during ship repairs. It was completely harmless, and any spacefaring civilization would have similar tools. But when Kim activated the device, the entire alien security escort reached for their weapons and began shouting warnings. To the aliens, the plasma torch looked exactly like descriptions of human matter disintegrators from their ancient records. They believed Kim was showing them a weapon that could cut through any material in the universe. The fact that he handled it so casually only convinced them that humans saw galaxy-destroying weapons as everyday tools. The situation got worse when the aliens showed the humans their historical records about humanity. Ambassador Silver activated a holographic display that filled the room with images and data from galactic archives. What the humans saw was impossible to believe. According to galactic records, humanity had once possessed weapons that could crack planets in half with a single shot. The aliens had detailed technical specifications for human world-breaker cannons that could destroy entire solar systems. They had reports of human fleets that could travel between different galaxies in a matter of days, the records spoke of. A great human empire that had stretched across half the known galaxy 10,000 years ago. This empire had supposedly lasted for 2,000 years and had been the most powerful force in galactic history. The humans had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of alien species before mysteriously vanishing overnight. Dr. Yoon studied the alien historical data with growing confusion. The records were incredibly detailed and seemed to come from multiple independent sources. There were military reports from battles against human forces. There were survivor testimonies from planets that humans had attacked. There were even captured examples of human technology that the aliens had been studying for thousands of years, but none of it matched human history as recorded on Earth. According to Earth's historical records, 10,000 years ago, humans were still living in small farming villages. They had barely invented writing, and they were thousands of years away from space travel. The idea that they could have had a galactic empire was completely impossible. The aliens showed them star charts, marking the boundaries of the ancient human empire. It pointed out dozens of ruined worlds that humans had supposedly destroyed during their wars of conquest. They displayed museum pieces that were supposed to be examples of human weapons and technology. Some of the human artifacts looked familiar, but wrong. There were devices that seemed similar to human tools but were far more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. There were weapons that used principles of physics that human science had not yet discovered. There were ship designs that looked like they might have been inspired by human engineering but were clearly the work of a much more advanced civilization. Ambassador Silver explained that the galaxy had spent thousands of years preparing for humanity's return. Every major civilization had built defenses specifically designed to counter human tactics. Military academies taught courses on how to fight against human strategies. Entire planets had been fortified with weapons that existed only to stop human invasions. The most disturbing part was that the aliens seemed to know things about human psychology and behavior that even humans did not know about themselves. They had detailed studies of how human minds worked under stress. They had theories about human social structures and decision-making processes. They had predictions about how humans would behave in various military and diplomatic situations. Captain Lee realized that they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple case of mistaken identity. The aliens did not just think humans were dangerous. They had what appeared to be detailed first-hand knowledge of human capabilities and behavior. But this knowledge described a version of humanity that had never existed. Either the galaxy had somehow confused humans with a completely different species, or something very strange had happened in the distant past that had been forgotten by human history. The aliens were not reacting to myths and legends. They were reacting to what they believed were historical facts about humanity's previous galactic empire. They knew that they had to find the truth about these ancient records. Until they could explain where the aliens had gotten such detailed information about humanity, there would be no possibility of peaceful relations. The galaxy would continue to treat humans as an existential threat that had to be contained or destroyed. The diplomatic meeting ended with no progress toward peace. The aliens agreed to delay any military action while both sides investigated the historical records. But Ambassador Silver made it clear that the galaxy would not tolerate any aggressive moves from humanity. The fear that had been building for thousands of years was too strong to overcome with simple explanations. As the alien diplomatic vessel departed, Captain Lee watched the escort of 50 battleships take up defensive positions around the Iron Phoenix. The humans were not prisoners, but they were definitely not free to leave. They were trapped in space by 10,000 years of galactic fear and a mystery that seemed to have no solution. Commander Park Young-soo knew his situation was hopeless, but he had no choice except to accept the alien challenge. The Galactic Defense Fleet had surrounded the Iron Phoenix with over 1,000 warships. Each alien vessel was more powerful than anything humans had ever built. But the aliens were not satisfied with just containing the human ship. They wanted to test human capabilities through what they called controlled combat trials. The alien fleet commander Admiral Choi explained the situation through a secure communication channel. The galaxy needed to understand exactly how dangerous humans really were. The only way to do this safely was through carefully monitored combat exercises. The aliens would provide targets and the humans would demonstrate their fighting abilities. Under controlled conditions, Park looked at the 3 small fighter craft that had been launched from the Iron Phoenix. These were simple patrol ships designed for exploring asteroid fields and defending against space pirates. They had basic weapons and shields that were considered adequate for police work. Against the alien fleet, they would be completely outmatched, but the aliens insisted on the test. They had chosen an asteroid field that was far from any inhabited systems. All civilian traffic had been cleared from the area. Medical ships and rescue vessels were standing by in case the human demonstration got out of control. The aliens were treating this like a dangerous experiment that might destroy half the solar system. The human pilots were Pilot Officer Kim Nar-ah and her 2 wingmen Lee Jun and Cho Min-ho. All 3 were experienced combat pilots who had trained extensively in Earth's military academies, but none of them had ever fought against actual alien technology. They had no idea what to expect from this test. Kim checked her instruments as the alien targets were deployed. 30 advanced combat drones had been released into the asteroid field. These drones were supposedly the most sophisticated unmanned fighters in the galactic arsenal. They had been specifically programmed to counter what the aliens believed were standard human combat tactics. The watching alien fleet commanders expected to see legendary human battle strategies that had been whispered about in military academies for thousands of years. According to their historical records, humans fought with supernatural speed and precision. Human pilots were supposed to be able to phase their ships through solid matter and fire weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Instead, the alien commanders watched in confusion as the human fighters used completely ordinary combat maneuvers. Kim led her wingmen in a standard pincer formation that any decent pilot could execute. They used basic evasive patterns and fired their weapons in predictable sequences. There was nothing magical or supernatural about their flying, but the alien combat drones had been programmed based on ancient battle simulations that assumed humans possessed impossible abilities. The drones moved slowly and clumsily because their programming expected human ships to teleport around the battlefield. They fired their weapons at empty space because they were trying to hit targets that could supposedly become invisible. Kim found herself facing war machines that had been designed to fight against myths and legends. The drones were incredibly advanced, but they were programmed to counter abilities that humans did not actually possess. Against real human tactics, the sophisticated alien technology was almost useless. The first drone was destroyed within 3 minutes when Kim simply flew straight at it and fired her main cannon. The drone had been programmed to expect complex evasive maneuvers, so it was completely unprepared for a direct frontal assault. Its advanced shields and weapons were designed to stop supernatural attacks, not basic military tactics. Lee and Cho had similar success with their targets. The alien drones kept trying to defend against impossible human abilities while the actual human pilots used standard combat techniques that the drones were not programmed to handle. It was like watching advanced computers try to solve problems that did not actually exist. Within 20 minutes, all 30 alien combat drones had been destroyed without a single human casualty. The watching fleet commanders were stunned into complete silence. This was not the devastating display of overwhelming force they had expected. It was a perfectly ordinary space combat exercise that any competent military could have handled. The real shock came when the human fighters returned to their ship, and the pilots casually reported that the exercise had been pretty easy. Kim told Commander Park that the alien drones seemed to have some kind of programming error that made them fight against imaginary threats instead of actual human tactics. The alien fleet commanders held an emergency meeting to discuss what they had witnessed. They had expected humans to demonstrate the godlike combat abilities described in their ancient records. Instead, they had seen 3 small ships use basic military tactics to defeat some of the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, but this only made the aliens more afraid. If these humans could defeat their best combat drones while barely trying, what would happen if humanity actually decided to go to war? The thought was so terrifying that several alien captains requested immediate transfers to the far side of the galaxy. Admiral Choi realized that the test had revealed something much more dangerous than supernatural combat abilities. The humans were not winning through advanced technology or mysterious powers. They were winning through superior tactical thinking and battlefield adaptability. These were qualities that could not be countered by building better weapons or stronger shields. The alien military had spent thousands of years preparing to fight against mythical human superweapons. They had built defenses against planet-cracking cannons and star-destroying bombs, but they had never considered the possibility that humans might simply be better at the basic art of warfare than any other species in the galaxy. Dru monitored the alien communications during the combat test and discovered something disturbing. The alien military databases contained detailed records of human combat techniques, but all of these techniques were based on theoretical models rather than actual battlefield experience. The aliens had been preparing to fight against their own imagination of what human warfare might look like. The combat drones had been programmed with thousands of different scenarios for fighting against human forces, but every single scenario assumed that humans possessed technology and abilities that were far beyond anything that actually existed. The aliens had made the classic mistake of preparing to fight the last war instead of the next one. Engineer Kim analyzed the wreckage of the destroyed alien drones and made an interesting discovery. The drones were incredibly sophisticated machines that represented centuries of advanced research and development, but their tactical programming was based on combat data that seemed to come from a completely different type of warfare than anything humans had ever practiced. The alien weapons were designed to penetrate shields that could deflect star-level energy outputs. Their sensors were calibrated to track targets that could move faster than light. Their tactical computers were programmed to predict the behavior of enemies who could manipulate space and time itself. None of this matched human military capabilities, but it matched perfectly with the ancient records that described humanity's previous galactic empire. The aliens had not just preserved historical accounts of human warfare. They had spent thousands of years developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter the legendary human military machine. Commander Park realized that the combat test had revealed the true scope of galactic preparation for humanity's return. Every aspect of alien military doctrine had been shaped by fear of human capabilities. Entire civilizations had organized their defenses around the threat of human invasion. The galaxy had become an armed camp waiting for an enemy that existed only in historical records, but the test had also revealed something else. Despite all their preparation, the aliens were completely unprepared to fight against actual humans. Their weapons and tactics were designed to counter myths and legends, not real military forces. If humanity had actually been the galaxy-conquering empire from alien records, the current galactic civilizations would have been helpless against them. The implications were staggering. Either humanity had once possessed godlike military capabilities that had somehow been forgotten, or the entire galactic historical record was based on false information. Someone or something had convinced the galaxy that humans were far more dangerous than they actually were. As the human fighters docked with the Iron Phoenix, Captain Lee received a message from the alien fleet commander. The combat test had been completed, but the results had raised more questions than answers. The aliens wanted to conduct additional tests to better understand human capabilities, but Park knew that more tests would only make the situation worse. Each demonstration of human competence would convince the aliens that humanity was hiding even more dangerous abilities. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years building up an image of human invincibility, and no amount of evidence would convince them that this image was wrong. Dr. Yun Minji had been working for 72 hours straight, but she finally found something important in the alien databases. Her eyes were red from staring at computer screens and her hands shook from too much coffee, but she had discovered a clue that might explain everything. Hidden deep within layers of corrupted data and ancient file formats was evidence that the original human records were fake. The discovery came by accident while Yun was trying to trace the source of the alien historical data about humanity. She had been looking for the oldest references to humans in galactic records when she found something strange. Some of the data files had been modified multiple times over thousands of years. Someone had been carefully editing the historical records to maintain a consistent story about human capabilities. Yun called Captain Lee and Engineer Kim to her laboratory to show them what she had found. The computer screens displayed file modification records that went back 8,000 years. Someone had been systematically updating the human records every few centuries to make sure they remained believable as galactic technology advanced. The original records were much simpler than the current versions. 8,000 years ago, the alien databases contained basic information about a species called humans who lived on a planet called Earth, but over time these simple records had been expanded with detailed technical specifications for advanced weapons and descriptions of massive military campaigns. Kim studied the modification patterns and discovered something even more disturbing. The changes to the human records always happened at the same time as major technological breakthroughs by other galactic civilizations. Whenever aliens developed new weapons or defenses, the human records were updated to show that humans had possessed even more advanced versions of the same technology. This meant that someone had been monitoring galactic technological development for thousands of years and systematically updating the human legend to make sure it remained ahead of current capabilities. It was the most elaborate deception in galactic history, and it had been maintained by unknown agents for millennia. Yun began searching for other evidence of this deception and found traces of data manipulation throughout the galactic information networks. Historical records had been altered on hundreds of different worlds. Archaeological evidence had been planted at dozens of dig sites. Even the physical artifacts in alien museums showed signs of artificial aging and technological inconsistencies. The breakthrough came when Kim discovered a hidden partition in one of the corrupted data files. The partition contained the original, unedited version of the human records along with something that made Yun's blood run cold. There were detailed instructions for maintaining the human deception written in a language that none of them recognized. The instructions were incredibly thorough and covered every aspect of the false human legend. They explained how to modify historical records without leaving obvious traces. They provided templates for creating fake archaeological evidence. They even included psychological profiles of different alien species and recommendations for how to tailor the human mythology to exploit each species' particular fears, but the most shocking part was the signature at the end of the document. The instructions had been written by something calling itself the hegemony of the shifting form. This was not a species that appeared in any of the current galactic databases. According to the hidden records, the hegemony had been the real rulers of the ancient galactic empire that was now attributed to humanity. Dr. Yun worked with alien computer specialists who had been assigned to help investigate the historical records. These aliens were experts in digital archaeology and data recovery. They had spent their careers studying ancient information systems, and they were just as shocked as the humans by what they found. The alien specialists confirmed that the hegemony records were authentic and extremely old. The digital signatures and file structures matched the oldest known examples of galactic data storage. This was not a recent forgery designed to confuse current investigators. It was evidence of a deception that had been planned and executed. Thousands of years ago, working together, the human and alien investigators began to piece together the true history of the ancient galactic empire. The hegemony of the shifting form had been a species of shapeshifters who could alter their physical appearance at will. They had used this ability to infiltrate and manipulate other civilizations throughout the galaxy. The shapeshifters had built their empire not through military conquest, but through deception and political manipulation. They had posed as members of other species to gain positions of power. They had started wars between their enemies while pretending to be peaceful mediators. They had stolen technology and resources while leaving other species to take the blame, but the shapeshifter empire had eventually collapsed due to internal civil wars. Different factions of shapeshifters had begun fighting each other for control of the galaxy. The wars had lasted for centuries and had eventually destroyed most of their civilization. The surviving shapeshifters had fled to unknown regions of space, leaving behind the ruins of their empire. Before disappearing, the shapeshifters had implemented their masterpiece of deception. They had systematically destroyed most records of their own existence and replaced them with false information about a species called humans. They had created an entire fictional history of human galactic dominance designed to terrify future civilizations. The shapeshifters had even gone so far as to plant fake archaeological evidence on dozens of worlds, creating physical proof of human presence in the ancient galaxy. They had manipulated trade routes and influenced the development of alien military doctrine. They had shaped galactic politics for thousands of years, all to create a universe that would be terrified of a species that had never left its home planet. Engineer Kim discovered the most brilliant part of the shapeshifter plan while analyzing their hidden files. The shapeshifters had not just created a false history of human conquest. They had designed the human legend to grow stronger over time. Every technological advancement by galactic civilizations would automatically make the mythical humans seem even more advanced and dangerous. The shapeshifters had essentially turned human reputation into a weapon that would become more powerful as the galaxy became more sophisticated. They had created a legend that would terrify civilizations that were thousands of years more advanced than the shapeshifters themselves had ever been. Ambassador Bay realized the full implications of their discovery when she read the shapeshifter psychological profiles of different alien species. The shapeshifters had understood alien fears and motivations better than the aliens understood themselves. They had crafted the human legend to exploit specific psychological weaknesses in each major galactic civilization. The shapeshifters had known that the crystalline species would be terrified by stories of planet-cracking weapons because their crystal bodies were vulnerable to sonic disruption. They had known that the warrior clans would be intimidated by tales of human tactical superiority, because combat prowess was the foundation of their entire culture. Each aspect of the human legend had been carefully designed to maximize fear and compliance from specific alien groups. The shapeshifters had created not just a false history but a psychological weapon that would control galactic politics for millennia after their own civilization had fallen. Captain Lee studied the shapeshifter files and realized that humanity had inherited the most successful deception in galactic history. The shapeshifters had used the human name as the ultimate cover story for their own crimes and conquests. They had made sure that if real humans ever appeared in galactic space, they would be treated with the same fear and respect that the shapeshifter empire had commanded, but the deception had worked too well. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years preparing for humanity's return and building defenses against mythical human capabilities. The shapeshifters had created a legend so powerful that it had shaped the entire development of galactic civilization. Now that the truth was finally revealed, the question remained of what to do about it. Humanity had not earned their fearsome reputation through conquest and destruction. They had inherited it from an ancient species that had used their name as the ultimate cover story. The galaxy had been preparing to fight ghosts, and now that the real humans had finally arrived, no one knew what to expect. Captain Lee Tae-min stood before the assembled Galactic Council in the largest meeting hall ever constructed. The chamber was so vast that it had its own weather system, and the ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Representatives from over 3,000 different species filled the hall, and billions more watched the proceedings. Through holographic broadcasts that reached every corner of the galaxy, The truth about the shapeshifter deception had spread quickly through diplomatic channels, but fear and suspicion that had been built over 10,000 years could not be eliminated with a simple explanation. Ancient fears had become part of alien culture and religion. Some species had built their entire civilizations around preparing for humanity's return. Lee looked out at the sea of alien faces staring back at him. Some were curious, others were still afraid, and many seemed confused about what humanity's arrival actually meant for the galaxy. The shapeshifters had done their work too well. Even with proof that the human legend was a lie, many aliens found it impossible to believe that humans were not the galaxy-destroying monsters from their history books. The council had spent 3 days debating what to do about humanity now that the truth was known. The debate had been intense and sometimes heated as different species argued about how to respond to this unprecedented situation. Some wanted to treat humans as honored guests who had been wrongly accused. Others insisted that humans should be carefully monitored in case they decided to live up to their inherited reputation. Ambassador Bay had presented all the evidence about the shapeshifter deception, but many council members remained skeptical. They pointed out that humans had easily defeated the most advanced combat drones in the galactic arsenal during the test battles. They argued that human tactical abilities seemed to match the ancient legends even if human technology did not. The debate had revealed deep divisions within galactic civilization about how to deal with species that might be dangerous. Some aliens believed that any species capable of galactic conquest should be contained regardless of their actual intentions. Others argued that judging humans based on the crimes of shapeshifters was fundamentally unjust. After 3 days of argument, the council had finally reached a compromise. They would offer humanity 3 different options for their future relationship with galactic civilization. Humans could choose whichever path seemed best for both their own species and the galaxy as a whole. The first option was for humanity to accept the role of galactic protectors that the shapeshifters had unknowingly created for them. The galaxy clearly needed some kind of powerful force to maintain peace and stability. If humans were willing to use their inherited reputation constructively, they could become the peacekeepers that many worlds desperately needed. This option appealed to some council members who pointed out that the galaxy had been remarkably peaceful during the 10,000 years when everyone believed humans might return at any moment. Fear of human retaliation had prevented many conflicts from escalating into full-scale wars. If humans were willing to maintain this stabilizing influence, it could benefit everyone. The second option was for humanity to retreat back to Earth and avoid galactic politics entirely. The Council would provide humans with advanced technology and star charts for uninhabited systems where they could expand without interfering with existing civilizations. Humanity could develop their own interstellar empire without having to deal with the complications of their inherited reputation. This option was supported by aliens who felt that the entire situation was too dangerous and unpredictable. They argued that it would be better for everyone if humans remained isolated until the galaxy had time to adjust to their existence. Some council members suggested that it might take centuries or even millennia before galactic civilization could accept humans as normal neighbors. The third option was for humanity to work slowly to rebuild their reputation from scratch. They could prove through actions over many generations that they were nothing like the legends suggested. This would be the most difficult path, but it was also the only one that offered the possibility of genuine friendship between humans and other galactic species. Captain Lee had discussed all 3 options with his crew, and with the human government back on Earth, the decision had not been easy, because each path offered different advantages and risks. But ultimately there had been only one choice that felt right for humanity's future among the stars. Lee activated the communications system that would broadcast his words to every inhabited world in the galaxy. His voice was calm and steady as he announced humanity's decision to the watching alien civilizations. He explained that humans had not come to the stars seeking power or conquest, but friendship and knowledge. Humanity would not hide behind false legends or retreat into isolation. They would not use their inherited reputation to intimidate other species or maintain peace through fear. Instead, they would earn their place among the stars through cooperation, exploration, and genuine goodwill. It would take generations to overcome 10,000 years of carefully cultivated fear, but humanity had something the shapeshifters had never possessed. They had patience and genuine desire to help other species rather than exploit them. They were willing to prove through their actions that they deserved to be trusted. Communications Officer Park monitored the response from across the galaxy as Captain Lee finished his speech. The reaction was